Great. Welcome. Thank you, everyone. This is the International Peace Coalition. Thank you all for joining us today. This is the 138th meeting that we've had consecutively. My name is Anastasia Battle. I'll be your moderator today, as well as Dennis Small and Dennis Speed, who is coming back after a short break. Thank you, everyone, for being part of this process. As people know, we created this forum 138 weeks ago in order to unite the international peace movement, which is now more important, is now probably the most important mission that we're all taking on here today. We welcome anyone from different religions, different philosophies, different nationalities, languages. We welcome all of you onto the discussion today, and I want to encourage people to share out this invitation, whether that's over YouTube or Zoom or Rumble or wherever you're watching this from. Share it with your organizations, your friends, and your reasonable enemies, because it is very, very important. And we do have a special guest on today, Professor Ted Postol, who we will get to shortly. But this will be a very lively and important discussion for all of us to be part of. To start us off today, we have Helga Zepp-LaRouche, who is the founder of the Schiller Institute and the initiator of the International Peace Coalition. Please go ahead, Helga, you have the floor.
Yes, hello to all of you. Well, the new year, which is still very young, still feels like sitting in a roller coaster where, one curve and one steep fall and then up again is, exchanging themselves with each other. So it's definitely a stormy beginning of the year, which started off with on the 3rd of January, the intervention in Venezuela, kidnapping President Maduro. Then on the 7th of January, President Trump gave this interview to the New York Times, where on the question of what international law he respects, he answered by saying, I only follow my own mind, my own morality. I do not need international law. Now, these developments, on top of everything else going on, caused the EIR team, this is the magazine founded by my late husband more than 50 years ago, decided to hold an emergency session to assemble outstanding individuals from around the world to discuss what is needed to re-establish international law. Because I don't think that without which the world is a safe place. We will talk about that later in the discussion. But, the newest development after the Davos speeches, and especially the very, very incredible speech by President Trump there, which I will comment on in a second, already, 2 days later, we find ourselves in another rather significant development. This time, I would say optimistically that the glass is half full, and using the words of Ray McGovern, maybe even a little bit more than half full. And what this refers to is that the news came that yesterday, the meeting between the American delegation of Witkoff, Kushner, and the third individual, I think his name is Grünbaum, met with President Putin in Moscow for 4 hours. And the official readout from Ushakov basically says, quote, "This was exceptionally substantive, constructive, extremely frank, and trusting." In this meeting, President Putin was briefed on the previous contact the Americans had with the Europeans and the Ukrainians on the question of, various outstanding topics.
Debate about it.
And then in the readout, it also says that it was stated again in the meeting between Putin and the American delegation that without resolving the territorial issues agreed upon the lines in Anchorage in the meeting in Alaska between Putin and Trump earlier in 25, it would not be worth counting on a long-term settlement. But that, refers obviously that the core interests of Russia have to be taken care of in any settlement. So that was very promising. And today, on Friday, there is already a follow-up meeting in Abu Dhabi, the first trilateral meeting, working group on security issues involving the Russian, American, and Ukrainian representative. And there is also parallel to that an economic group on a bilateral level involving Kirill Dmitriev from the Russian side and Witkov from the American side. Now, the interesting thing is that the Russian delegation in Abu Dhabi is headed by Admiral Kotyukov from the GRU, top advisor of Putin, who is the individual who briefed the US military attaché in Moscow on the findings concerning the drone attack on Putin's residence in Valdai in Volgograd, namely the physical evidence of, involving who provided the data to the Ukrainians. So top hot issue, and that particular individual, Admiral Kotyakov, is top in the negotiations. So I think this is very interesting and very promising. Now, the Russians also said, that they would basically provide 1 billion for the reconstruction of Gaza. This was also Putin's response to when he was invited to join the newest proposal by President Trump to create the so-called Peace Council, where many people were invited, among them Putin, and he sort of jokingly said, "Yes, I will pay the 1 billion, and you can take it out of the frozen assets." And this seems to be directed towards Gaza if an agreement comes about. And also that the remaining money frozen could be used to reconstruct the territories in Ukraine, which would then be part of the Russian part, namely the Donbass and similar things. Now, it was also stated that if this Ukrainian agreement comes into fruition, then there would be already large projects decided between Russia and the Americans to be carried out. So as I said, it's a roller coaster, and we can only be relieved really if this is absolutely for sure settled. But I would say that, given the fact that, there is right now from the Russian side such a statement, I think there is a sign of hope. And if this is continued, it could really shift the balance. Now, I can only say, given the world situation, which is in a, really unbelievable, shaky situation, it is too early to in any case to stop being mobilized, because in the speech in Davos, President Trump had said many things, but the most important focus was on Greenland. He had said again and again he wants to own Greenland, not just militarily use it, but own it. And this was again, if you can just go and grab other people's territory around the world. So this is a big thing, because obviously the question is why does Trump want to own Greenland? In the speech in Davos, he said that the purpose is that Greenland would be necessary for building the so-called Golden Dome, which is supposed to be the absolutely ironclad defense system the United States supposedly wants to have in a couple of years. We invited the world-renowned expert Ted Postol to basically tell us his findings on what is about, what is the story behind the Golden Dome. So I will not even try to discuss the content of that because we have more qualified people here on the program to do so. All I can say is that immediately afterwards, there was a discussion between President Trump and NATO General Secretary Rutte, in which this whole threat, one can say, was reduced again by basically saying that they came to an agreement that there will be no ownership on the agenda, that the issues can be settled between NATO and the United States without the issue of sovereignty of Greenland or Denmark being discussed. Now, one has to say that neither President Trump nor NATO General Secretary Rutte have in any way the mandate to negotiate over the sovereignty of a NATO member, namely Denmark, and not also Greenland. So we have to see how that plays out. In any case, the present situation, I mean, unless we really have an absolute agreement, I think we can absolutely not be in quiet waters. Now, also, if you look at the rest of the world, it remains extremely tense because already on his way back from Davos in Air Force One, Trump basically said, when asked about what is happening with Iran, he said a big flotilla is going in this direction. Rather that I don't want to see anything happen, but we are watching closely, making one of these typical mafioso-like statements, you better watch out or else. And there is actually a massive deployment of American warships in the direction of the Mediterranean and the region in general, both from the South China Sea, various aircraft carrier groups, also from the United States, are on the way. And F-16s have already been deployed into Jordan. Now, obviously, this comes on top of the sanctions and the efforts to provide protesters inside Iran with technology as like Starlink to bypass the clampdown on the internet. There were demonstrations, basically the issue was regime change. That seems to have calmed down after various backs and forths. But why do these massive military deployments into the region take place? And then you have Trump's ominous statement, let's watch it and see. And we have to remember in June, when the Israelis and the US attacked Iran, there was also diplomacy going on and, statements, we will talk, but then out of the blue came this attack. So the trust in the words somehow has significantly decreased. Also, naturally, if you look at the overall situation, it remains fraught with many, many insecurities. On February 6th, the New START treaty, the disarmament treaty, or the arms control treaty is running out. Putin had made the offer to prolong it for 1 year in order to find a new negotiation. Trump had made some ambiguous statements, yeah, well, let's see, but nothing conclusive. So as of now, we are still something like 2 weeks away until the last arms control treaty will be eliminated. And, looming is a massive arms race in all areas, including nuclear arms. Also, it has not been revoked that this year the US medium-range missiles are supposed to be stationed in Germany, which was concluded between Biden and Chancellor Scholz at the outside of the NATO meeting in Washington, I think in 24. And that has been clearly answered by Russia as an absolute not to be tolerated development, because these weapons can be nuclear armed. They can have dual use, but the Russians would have to assume that they could be armed nuclear. And the Dark Eagle cruise missile has a range of 2,700 kilometers far into the territory of Russia. And there have been various statements by the Russian side that that would make Germany a prime target for an attack if these missiles are stationed in an overall extremely fragile world environment. So that is why I think what we have to discuss is not only get an assessment of the situation, which we will hear from both Ted Postol and also Jens Jørgen Nielsen from Denmark on the situation in Denmark and Greenland. In the discussion period, discuss how to continue the initiative which came out of our EIR emergency meeting of the 12th of January, where we decided that we would launch an unprecedented worldwide mobilization to reinstall a discussion about international law. And we also have a new proposal, which I want to just announce already here. This comes from a French person and group. It is a petition to reactivate the UN Charter as it was designed initially, and it lists certain points. We will put this in the chat for people to discuss, and if people agree, we will include that in the package of our activities, because out of the EIR special meeting, there is now a political action meeting has formed itself, which will meet in the next several days to then discuss all the many proposals of how to build this international movement. So stay tuned and get active with us, because this is the most, in my modest opinion, the most important effort to get back to a system of international law. So this is what I wanted to say in the beginning, and I give the word back to you.
Great. Thank you, Helga. And I will include that in the chat in just a moment. I'll grab that link for everyone. I do want to say that Dr. Postol will only be available until about noon today. So we will be taking questions after he speaks. So please submit your questions into the Q&A section of this webinar, and we'll take them after Ted Postol speaks. But thank you very much, Helga, and we'll make sure to get that in the chat for everyone. It is a great pleasure to have you on, Dr. Postol. He is a MIT Professor Emeritus, and I always say the world leading expert on nuclear weapons, but definitely one of the most well-known, and it's such a pleasure to have you on, Mr. Postol. Please, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I have to say that this was at the command of Colonel General Helga, and I'm sorry about having to get off at noon, but I had a previous commitment, but I must obey my commander. So I'm on to talk about Greenland and Golden Dome. Now, let me say right from the beginning, so there's no confusion here, that Golden Dome has nothing to do with Greenland. In other words, I'll explain that shortly. But in order to you might want to keep in mind that Greenland was supposed to be needed because of the threat from China. It was supposed to be needed because of the threat from Russia. You just pick an issue, some silly argument, and it's been made by President Trump. So we're in an environment where anything goes, and that has increased the normal level of chaos and confusion among people, not only bystanders like us, but political leaders. I mean, people just have no idea what is true and what is not. I just want to make a couple of one minor point here is that for people to think about. We won't be able to talk about it in detail, but I think it's for your audience who are sophisticated observers. It's important to keep in mind that something is different about Trump in the last few months, and he was extreme, irrational, chaotic, psychotic before this, but there's something more extreme about him and his behavior now. I don't know why or what it is. Some people have speculated something medical, like a stroke or something. Who knows? But there's something that has changed, and it's just something we should all keep in mind. And those of you who are more sophisticated observers than I may want to give it some of your attention and share your speculations with others on this, what could be behind this. Anyway, let me go to the Golden Dome issue, and I'll try to be very clear and very succinct. So the Golden Dome is a concept that was, like many of the things that the Trump administration has put out, is just off the cuff. I mean, it's just it's something that came out of nowhere and has no technical foundation of any kind. I'll describe the mythical idea of Golden Dome, but mythical is a good term to use to describe what this program is. It would be a program if it was real, and the program basically would be to expand the existing ground-based missile defense system of the United States. This is something that already exists. I won't discuss that system, although if people want me to at some future time, I'll be happy to do that. But it adds a new space-based component to it, which is satellites orbiting around the Earth. And those satellites have interceptors in them, or the interceptor, or the ESA satellite is an interceptor with some kind of support system, because the interceptor can't be in space without support of some kind. And they're orbiting, and the idea is that the interceptors would shoot at ICBMs as the ICBMs rise from the surface of the Earth on their powered trajectories toward targets. Now, implicit, again, never stated, implicit in this idea is the understanding that the existing ground-based missile defense, the system that already exists, really has little or no capability, because the idea of the space-based component is to destroy the ballistic missiles before they complete their powered flight. And the reason you want to destroy them before they complete their powered flight is once they complete powered flight, they not only release warheads, but they release immense numbers of decoys. And the ground-based system has no ability to tell the difference between decoys and real warheads. I can explain that in another talk. But basically, it has no chance of working against very, very, very simple countermeasures by any adversary. So you want to, in theory, in practice, you maybe can't do it, but in theory, you want to be able to use these satellites to intercept these ICBMs while they're gaining speed and getting ready to eventually deploy warheads and decoys. So that's the purpose of this system. I've already said that the surface base will never work because of the problem of decoys. And basically what you have are space-based missile, space-based interceptors to engage the incoming ICBMs. Now, the many problems with this system, but first of all, you have a satellite in orbit. And in order to be able to engage this ICBM that has a relatively short flight time, maybe less than 3 minutes, you have to be able to reach this ICBM from a satellite orbit. Now, you'd like to have the satellite at much lower orbit so that the interceptor doesn't have to travel that far, but the atmosphere gets denser as you change the altitude. And 400 kilometers is a very low altitude to deploy this system at, but you can imagine doing that. Now, so here what I've done is assumed a 400 kilometer altitude and with a satellite. The speed of the satellite is not quite 8 kilometers per second. That's determined by the laws of gravity, the force of gravity. You're moving fast enough that your circular acceleration offsets the pull of gravity, so you're in a circular orbit. But there's a critical aspect of this choice of altitude. Every 6 or 7 years, you're going to have to replace the satellite because there's enough aerodynamic drag. The drag is low, but there's enough aerodynamic drag that the satellites will slow up due to aerodynamic drag and fall into the atmosphere, so fall into the Earth's surface. So, for example, if you want to deploy a system of satellites for 20-year life cycle, you're going to have every 7 years, you're going to have to replace the satellite. So you're going to have 3 generations of these satellites in order to keep, a single constellation in orbit. So any number of satellites you would have to launch at a given time, you have to triple if this system is going to be working for, let's say, 20 years. This will have important implications for its cost, not to mention the operation and effort to keep it. So what I've assumed here, just somewhat arbitrary, is I assume that at some point we see the launch of an ICBM on the surface of the Earth. Keep in mind the satellite is moving at a high speed itself, nearly 8 kilometers per second. So it might take 20 seconds for a satellite, a completely different satellite in space, to see from deep space that there's a launch. So you have another satellite or satellites, constellation of satellites that are looking down at the surface of the Earth. It sees the launch of the missile, of the ICBM, and it starts tracking the ICBM. And since the ICBM is going very slowly initially, it might need as long as 20 or more seconds before it knows what direction the ICBM is going. Keep in mind that it's going to take, almost a minute and a half from the launch of this interceptor, which might occur at this location here, to get to an intercept point, which is shown on the right lower side here. So, everything takes time. And in this case, I'm assuming an interceptor at 5 kilometers per second is a long, complicated set of trade-offs but this is a good first order guess of what the system looks like. So if you want to get a better feel for what the system looks like, you would need about 1,000 to 1,200 satellites in orbit to make sure you always had one interceptor at a location, in this case shown here, where it can intercept a launch that might be seen some 150, 200 seconds earlier. So this just shows you where the satellite was when the launch of the ICBM was detected, and this shows you its location as the interceptor from the satellite travels outward, eventually intercepting the ICBM late in flight. So this particular constellation here is showing you 288, I think, satellites. So it's not close to the 11 or 1200 satellites you would need. And you see this little pancake-like shape shows you the reach, or it's a rough estimate of the reach of the interceptor, given it has enough time to fly to an intercept point. So if you want to cover the planet with enough satellites so that you can engage one ICBM launch at any location on the planet's surface, you're going to need about 1,200 satellites. That's to get one ICBM. If you're worried about 100 ICBMs being launched, because a missile field which contains hundreds of ICBMs could easily launch 100 ICBMs or more. If you then wanted to be able to engage 100 launches, which is a much more realistic possibility, instead of having 1,200 satellites, you need 120,000 satellites. So this system scales, it's 1,000 to 1. So in the size of the system you need and able to do anything. So basically, if you wanted to estimate the cost, I'm not going to go through this. People who want the slides, just let me know and I'll send them to them. If you want to be able to have a reasonable theoretical system, you would need to spend probably 10 to 15 trillion dollars. That's 1/3 to 1/2 the gross domestic product of the United States to field this system. And I go through the numbers here, and the numbers are very slush, very they're guesswork, but it's certainly reasonable that an $8 trillion cost figure for a system capable of engaging, at least in theory, not necessarily practically, 100 missile launch could easily cost 10 or 15 trillion dollars. So now the problem with this, since we're talking theory, implementation, of course, is fantastic. So an important problem to keep in mind with this system is that these interceptors are designed to shoot down at ICBMs coming from the surface of the Earth. But you could take this interceptor, which has a 5 kilometer per second speed. It's got to have a 5 kilometer per second speed because it's shooting down, and it's got to be able to get to an ICBM that's rising from the surface of the Earth. So it has to have 5 kilometers per second. If it has 5 kilometers per second, then you instead just use the 5 kilometer per second interceptor to push the satellite speed from about 8 kilometers per second to maybe 10.5 kilometers per second. So you're only using about 2.5 of the potential. You could get to any altitude where significant numbers of satellites are deployed in simply a few hours, 1 or 2 hours. So these satellites shown up here are in what's called geosynchronous orbit. These satellites are satellites that are at an altitude, 40,000 kilometers, where they rotate at the same rate as the Earth rotates. So they appear to always be over the same physical location on the Earth. So that's why, for example, when you're watching television from a satellite transmission, the satellite appears to always be over the same spot in the sky because the satellite is rotating above the Earth at the same rate as the Earth is rotating below. Now, it turns out that there are all kinds of satellites besides communication and television satellites that are extraordinarily important for military applications. For example, early warning satellites that would tell you that a missile launch is being launched against your country. Various kinds of military communication satellites, critical for the military operations. At half the orbit, maybe some 20,000 kilometers, you have what are called the global positioning satellites. These are for navigation. These satellites are extremely critical, not only for commercial and civilian use, but also for military use. Missiles are guided by them. Ground troops keep track of their locations. Targets are attacked by keeping track of their locations. These are absolutely critical for military operations. All of these satellites, there are only a few tens of these, maybe 25 or 30 of these satellites, could be immediately attacked by the beginning of a Golden Dome deployment, because the Golden Dome is going to have 1,200 of these satellites, all of which can all be used to attack satellites at all altitudes. But when you start launching it, the first 25 or 30 of these things in space, which have no capability for defense, would have a gigantic anti-satellite capability from the point of view of countries like China and Russia. They are not going to tolerate this kind of threat. What they will do is hard to know, because they're difficult choices for them. But for example, if they chose to launch a similar Golden Dome kind of system, you could have two orbiting satellite systems with thousands of satellites, maybe tens of thousands of satellites in close proximity at a 400-kilometer altitude, and the first one that shoots at the other is the king of the world. There are other problems I'll talk about very briefly at the end of my discussion. So the other problem is that there are all kinds of interceptors that have been built by both countries, and these interceptors have a relatively easy time going vertically to altitudes well above 400 kilometers. A lot of these interceptors are quite small. They weigh, 1,000 kilograms or less. They can be carried on airplanes. So these these low orbit satellites could be attacked. And so what you could simply do if you want, remember we're talking about countries like China and Russia, they could simply punch a hole in the Golden Dome satellite constellation that will, of course, propagate to another location. So if there's going to be a launch from a given location, you punch a hole in the satellite system at a few minutes away from the actual location where the satellites would be over the area for engagements, and then your launch would go unopposed. So this is a very easy thing to do. You're talking about a few tens of interceptors to punch a hole in the system of hundreds of thousands of satellites. This is not a big deal. So the countermeasure against this system is substantial. Now, one of the problems you have with this countermeasure is there are lots of things in low Earth orbit. And if you create debris from intercepting these satellites, you can create an effect where the satellite debris becomes so intense that it has a multiplicative consequence for destroying satellites. So what happens is there's so much debris that the debris destroys other satellites, and those satellites create more debris, and then that debris creates more debris from other satellite destruction, and low Earth orbit would be unusable for any kind of use you want, military or commercial. We would lose all ability to do low Earth orbit things. So, to say the least, this idea, if you want to dignify it with the term of idea, has really it's totally crazy. It has no merit at any level you can find, and it's something that's just simply out of the figment of the imagination of Donald Trump, which is then echoed by the people around him, like his Secretary of War, Mr. Hegseth. But to put it politely, this is a delusion. And the idea that somehow Greenland is in any way connected with this system is simply another delusion on top of a delusion. So it's a delusion, you know, it's a delusion upon a delusion upon a delusion. There's nothing here that's real except in the mind of Donald Trump and his I will say it, his criminal government, because we have a criminal government right now in control in the United States, and I mean that seriously, because there's a domestic crisis going on. Your people, of course, are understandably concerned with the international aspects of American behavior. But right now, we have brown shirts, the equivalent of Nazi brown shirts, running through the streets of our major cities, beating up people and assaulting them. And it's very much like brown shirts were in Germany during the 1930s, under when Hitler was beginning to try to take power, or took power. And we have a crisis going on, and I think it is going to affect Trump's international behavior. It's a growing crisis, and American domestic politics, like all countries, the domestic politics of all countries, has a direct effect on the foreign policy of these countries, because the political leadership has to cater to the domestic reactions of their population. I won't get into that here, but let me open it for questions and answers. So I'm sorry I went a little longer than I intended to.
Oh, don't worry. This was an excellent presentation. People are already knocking on my door asking for your slides, so please send them to me.
Can I send them to you and then
Yeah, send them to me and I'll make sure to share it with everyone. I'll put it
Great,
in the
thank you.
chat, but I'll also send it out as a general email because I'm positive
Thank
people
you.
want to use this.
That's helpful.
Yeah, this is very, very helpful. We do have a few questions coming in written, but I want to go to Helga and then Mr. Nielsen to see if there's any response or thoughts.
I mean, the obvious question is, if this system is so flawed, it must be also known to some other military experts.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And
The Russians are sitting there scratching their head, I'm sure. Chinese too.
Given the fact that this would be extremely costly, I mean, how can it be that an entire government, that there is nobody inside this team who would tell President Trump that this is not workable?
Well, having experience in the U.S. government myself, people follow orders. They don't think. And if they do think and they raise questions, they get pushed aside if they're lucky. If not, they get destroyed. They get removed. And so most people don't think at all. When I was in the Pentagon, I was absolutely stunned by the reaction to Ronald Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars. I was in the Pentagon when that occurred. And people just accepted it. It was amazing. This had a radicalizing experience for me, because when I was in the Pentagon, I knew I disagreed with most people. I understood that, but I could work with people. I work with people I disagree with all the time, even Helga. So, but I basically thought of these people as having different views, and being more conservative, whatever that means, than I was, but basically rational. And the way these people just embraced the Strategic Defense Initiative, which was overtly ridiculous. I mean, from the point of view of a technically informed person, this was totally ridiculous. It was like, it's like hallucination. And I went into the building the day after the March 4 speech by Reagan, and all these people are dancing around. I mean, I had an extraordinary situation, because I didn't care, like today, I say what I think. And I was in this large bay where this very senior captain, who reported to the admiral in charge of my division, which was strategic nuclear division. And his name was Linton Brooks. Those of you who know some of the ambassadors, he now was an ambassador. And he's dancing around the room saying, we're going to defend lives, not avenge them. He had this idea, And I was sitting in this room, and there were maybe 50 people in the room, officers and non-commissioned officers and regular officers. And I just shouted across the room. I said, Linton, how are we going to do this? And he froze. I said, where is the science for this? And he just, he was just, and that was, first day after the Strategic Defense Initiative. And afterwards, I attended seminar after seminar where people were making absolutely outrageous claims. And, I was speaking directly and loudly, and, I was just buried. I was just buried in the storm of nonsense. And that's what happens in governments and other groups that are it's sometimes called groupthink, but the bureaucracy is very powerful, and its ability to drown out or suppress alternative thinking is very, very, very powerful. And that's what you're seeing now.
I want to just comment on that, since we were involved in the SDI discussion very much so, because my late husband, Lyndon LaRouche, had developed a plan which was not what was made by the media out of it, and not what certain generals and people in the Pentagon, they try to reduce it to some kind of kinetic operation, while what my husband had proposed in the middle of the middle range missile crisis, where you had a situation which was characterized by many people, including Helmut Schmidt, that we were on the verge of World War III because the launch on warning left only a few minute warning time. And that was the background why Lyndon LaRouche had proposed a conception whereby the two superpowers would jointly develop technologies based on new physical principles to then, basically deploy these systems together. This was a very, very different idea than what the Star Wars propaganda in the media made out of it. And, it was meant to be basically an effort to overcome geopolitics by having a platform of the two superpowers to work together in developing of new systems. And it seems to me that, given the fact that it was rejected, to even explore this road of joint collaboration, I think the Russians have continued, and all the new weapon systems which Putin sort of launched as a surprise on the West, with the hypersonic missiles, the various weapon systems he announced on the 1st of March 2018, and all the systems subsequently were the result of the fact that the Russians continued to look for new principles. So
Yeah, well, the foundations, historical foundations of Star Wars is a subject in itself. If people are interested, I was in the Pentagon and witnessed this at a very high level. I was an advisor to the Chief of Naval Operations during this whole process. So I was talking to the Chief of Naval Operations, who did listen to some of the things I said. So maybe we can do that in another session because we're running out of time. And but I agree with you. It's a shocking story. It's a story that people should be aware of, not because it tells you about how wise and capable governments are, but because it tells you how totally reckless and out of control a government can be when people don't know what they're doing, and they don't know what they're doing. And I promise you, if we have a discussion about my experience there, it's going to shock a lot of your people to the core. And I'm happy to share it anyway, but that's another discussion. We should take thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I have. So what I'm going to do is, given that we're running short on time, I'm going to read a couple of questions that were written in, and then also go to Dennis Speed, who had a question as well.
Yes.
One is from Debashis. He says, a brilliant exposition by Dr. Postol, given that spending required for the satellite missile interceptor costs $1 to $2 trillion. Won't this bankrupt the U.S. real economy, increase tensions with Russia and China, and isn't this and isn't a purely financial cost benefit analysis better to pursue arms control and peace? And then another question comes in from Mary Jane. What must be done to, quote, punch a hole in, what you were describing? How is this done? Thank you. And then there's a few other questions which I will forward over to you, but I'll go over to Dennis. Dennis
Yeah.
Speed.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Postal. Just for the purposes of the time, because I know you have to go. I
Yes.
think what you said concerning us having this further discussion is a very important thing because obviously, since the time of the SDI, there's been all kinds of things that have been happening between the Russians, the Chinese, and others in the area of laser research and development and so on. But it's a way bigger question. You've raised something I just want to return to. Have you ever heard? You've probably heard the term cosmic debris before, right?
Oh, yeah.
As in, hey there, brother, who you jiving with that cosmic debris? You've heard that before,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I was struck by the way that you outlined how, if you were to build this system, you'd have this low Earth orbit traffic jam of debris that could actually destroy what there is of some various of these space-based systems.
Yeah.
And you then said some other things concerning the government. So I just wanted you, if you would, as you go, as you're leaving, to just reemphasize for people so they understand that you're actually talking about a form of which
Chain
would,
reaction.
yeah,
Chain
yeah,
reaction. Sorry.
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Basically, if you hit a satellite directly, you're going to shatter it, and your interceptor is going to break up into many small pieces, and so is the satellite. Now the satellite. So if you think of it, I hit the satellite. The satellite's traveling at a tremendous speed. So if I hit the satellite, you can think of the debris cloud from this just sort of getting larger as it propagates outward. And of course, it's going to there's going to be a probability of hitting other satellites as this thing orbits. And if you get enough debris, and this has been studied, incidentally, this is not a fiction,
Mm.
the debris will have enough probability of hitting another satellite and causing more debris that you get a chain reaction where the whole low Earth orbit gets populated with small pieces of debris that are so dense that you launch anything into that environment, it lasts only a short time, maybe days or weeks before it gets hit. So you would not be able to use low Earth orbit for any of, Starlink or any of these other things that people want. It would be gone for probably forever, because or for decades, and because it would depend on the altitudes you're talking about, because atmospheric drag would over time clean out the lower orbits, but it would be a very bad situation. So as far as punching a hole in the system, you can imagine I have a 1,000 or 2,000 pound interceptor mounted, several of them mounted on a combat aircraft, Sukhoi 34, F-15, F-16. And I take this aircraft and I just take it and I just go vertical with it and I launch the interceptor. Interceptors are light. They can be carried multiple on an airplane. That interceptor will have enough velocity that it could rise vertically to an altitude of over 400 kilometers. So now it's going slowly relative to the speed of the satellite, but it's got infrared eyes. So it can look and see this satellite coming at a very, very long range, hundreds of kilometers range. And since it's got all kinds of computational and data on the target it's going at, it knows its it knows its orbital characteristics. All it has to do is make slight adjustments based on what the infrared sensor sees, because it's basically on an intercept trajectory, and it can destroy the satellite. That was done in an experiment with by the United States with its sea-based Standard Missile 3. It was already done. And it's a very easy thing to do for an advanced state like China or Russia. And, you could, so you need to destroy 10 satellites in 10 satellites in a small location. 1 or 2 aircraft could do it. 100, 10 or 15 aircraft could do it. This is not a big effort given a nation state like Russia or China. So this is piece of cake but of course in the process you might start this chain reaction. So on the other question, I hope the facts I gave make it clear that this is not a solution and that arms control of some kind, maybe not even just common sense restraint, just don't do anything. Anyway, Helga,
Mr. Postol, just one more. Helga has one more question, if
Yes,
that's okay. Go ahead, Helga.
Yeah, after what you outlined, it does not seem to have anything with Greenland. But why is Trump making that point? I mean, you must have some arguing how this relates to the Golden Dome.
I mean, it's like the sound and fury of idiots. I mean, what can we? I mean, there's to look for rationality where there is none is a mistake. It's irrational. I mean, the man is totally out of touch with reality. He has been totally out of touch with reality before he was president. He's a narcissistic psychopath. And I think he's worse at the moment. I think there's been some kind of, I'm guessing it's a medical incident. I don't know. Maybe it's the pressure of, he's losing popularity domestically in the United States at a fantastic rate. So maybe it's the psychological, because he's wants to be adored so much. I have no way. I mean, I'm just not trained. And even a properly trained person would still have to make guesses because we don't really know. I mean, one of the things I have heard, and I want to be clear, this is wild speculation, but not, he disappeared for a little while, for a few days. And after that, he was clear. It was evident, at least to medical people I've talked to, that he was all of a sudden on all kinds of blood thinners. And some people have suggested he might have had a minor stroke or something, and they just covered it up. After all, Biden was really a sick guy when he left the presidency. And the fundamental problem for those of your viewers who are American citizens, the fundamental problem as American citizens we have to deal with is the presidency has become a much too powerful office. The constraints of the Congress no longer apply. The Congress has not been doing its job reining in the president. The original design of the American system was a brilliant separation of powers. The courts are not functioning too. We have a Supreme Court that's anti-democratic. I want to be clear. I work with conservatives all the time. I have no problem with conservatives. I have many friends who are quite conservative, and I have no problem with them as long as they're rational and we agree on what the real world looks like. And I have many conservative friends who I regard with great affection and respect, who I disagree with, but, they're real, they're rational, and they're decent. And this is different. This is an autocratic, anti-democratic Supreme Court. And we have a big problem in our country for those of us who are Americans, and we have to solve it. Others can't do that. Anyway, I'll stop here and stop boring you.
Absolutely, you are not
Or
boring
stop
us.
offending you.
I think you thoroughly scared the pants off everyone, which is a
Well,
good thing.
I'm glad, because we should be concerned. We all should be concerned. And thank you so much for tolerating me and having me on. And I would like to suggest that it would take maybe an hour and a half of your, but I could share my experience on how Star Wars came about. And the story is really applicable beyond the issue of Star Wars. It has to do with the irrationality and danger that's posed by these bureaucracies that go uncontrolled.
I think we will take you up on it and explore soon occasion.
Yes, Colonel General.
Well, on that note.
Okay, I'll leave now. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you
It
all.
was a pleasure to have you on, Dr. Postol. It was a pleasure to have you on. I have a bunch of questions that I will compile into one email and send that to you, and then we can send that back to the people, involved and whatnot. There are a lot of great questions that are still coming in. And please send me those slides. I'll make sure to share that with everybody. And thank you again for joining us today. This was
Thank you
excellent
so much.
Thank
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. All right. Well, that was really fantastic. And again, for folks who are just joining us, I put the link in the chat for people to sign up for International Peace Coalition emails. If you'd like to get those slides from Mr. Postol, please make sure that you have signed up for that. Okay, we shall continue with our agenda and get back on our track here. So next, I'd like to bring in Mr. Jens Jorgen Nielsen. He's a former Moscow correspondent for the Danish daily Politiken, author of books on Russia and Ukraine, director of the Russian-Danish Dialogue, and assistant professor of communication and cultural differences. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Nielsen. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for inviting me.
You have the floor. Please go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. First, I would like to thank for the invitation. And I have promised Helga it will take me only 10 minutes, but let's see how things. I make a small presentation also. Secondly, I would like to thank Postol. It was very, very interesting to hear. I could have listened for 1.5 hours, what he said, but it'll be at another occasion, of course. But anyway, because I am being a Dane, I think I will tell a little about how the things look from a Danish perspective and a Greenlandic perspective. As you probably all know, my country is a kingdom, like United Kingdom, and consisting of Denmark as the first country. Second country is Faroe Islands, also in the North Atlantic, and certainly we have Greenland. And we have 3 different languages. Færø language is it's a Scandinavian language. Greenlandic language is associated with the Inuit language of Alaska, Canada, and some also in northern Siberia, in what is now Russia. So just to put this straight, and the first thing I will say is that what has taken place the past few weeks, months, if you say, has been deeply unsettling for the vast majority of Danes and Greenlanders. I know Danes, I have friends Danes who are now in the 60s, 70s, who since childhood not only admired and looked up to the United States, but have also regarded the United States as a cornerstone of Denmark's existence as an independent nation, democratic nation. The idea that the United States might threaten Denmark with military action should it not voluntarily relinquish a large territory, well, not merely a large piece of ice, as President Trump phrased it without any empathy, was entirely beyond what they could have imagined. And so I talk to people who simply do not believe their own eyes. The thing is it a nightmare we are living through? Because the Americans, we always had an attitude of friendship to them. We always believed that they were most close friends, even closer than European friends. Germans, Brits, French, and things like that, because we have been in Denmark has been at war with Germany, of course, several times, with Great Britain, with Germany, with other countries, Russia, never, American, USA, never. So you can imagine that how puzzled and how perplexed many people are in Denmark about this, and many Danes, as a small nation, we very much would like to have a world order which is rule-based, because so that no bully can come and steal us, because we had 80, 90 years ago, Nazi Germany occupied Denmark at this point, and many Danes remember it as very, very humiliating, of course. But I would say that even though the Nazi Germany occupied Denmark in 1940, that didn't add it to Germany. It did not become a part of Germany like Austria at this time. There was no Anschluss, as they say in German language for this. So we have to go back to 1864 when Germany, Prussia, occupied the southern part of what is now Denmark, North Schleswig. It's a long story. I will not go further into it, but just to say that we have been used to peace. We have been used to, to have a world order since 1945, where United States played a very, very important role. Well, look into Greenland. Greenlanders have also experienced considerable anxiety the recent months, and we can see we have television programs coming from Greenland. Many children are afraid to sleep. Many grown-ups are thinking, how can they fly if America will come and occupy Greenland? So there is also a relatively strong sense of unity in the Greenlandic population. So we have in Greenland, there's a parliament, there's a government, and now you get used to some Greenlandic words I will use. The word for the Greenlandic government is naalakkersuisut. Naalakkersuisut. So it means government in Greenlandic, and there's 4 parties in the parliament. 4 have joined the government. There's one party which has not joined the parliament. This is called Nalarak, and it means something like independence. And they're calling for immediate independence from Denmark now in the situation. For most people now in Greenland, and of course also in Denmark, it's very difficult to reconcile with current circumstances. To place confidence in full Greenlandic independence at present, well, it seems for most people totally unrealistic. Taking into account Trump, what will he do if suddenly Greenland will declare its independence from Denmark? I know that the other parties would like to have independence sometimes, but in the future. So there's also discussion in Greenland about independence from Denmark, and of course with USA. But most people I know in Greenland now they're becoming much more Danish. They think that Denmark, as one part of the kingdom, should unite with the Greenlandic people. We should act as one, and we have also, our foreign minister. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, and also the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Greenland, Vivian Motzfeldt. They went, to Washington to discuss with Vance and Rubio. I could also say that most Danes were definitely not reassured when NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and President Trump, well, they announced an agreement has been reached as to Greenland. But most Danes, all Danes, I would say, including the government, the ministers, said, what kind of agreement has been assured? Because Denmark has not taken any part in it, nor had the Greenland government, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So there was no any meaningful involvement of either the Danish or the Greenlandic population or government. So we cannot, because our prime minister was asked, what does it agreement? What does it entail? She could not say so. She went to Greenland, to discuss things. So of course it makes it's even more difficult. And the Greenlandic government, Naalakkersuisut, they could not explain anything neither. So situation is very problematic, and of course the public sentiment as to Trump has not improved by presidents. Very derogatory, bullying remarks in his speech in Davos. It was perceived as very, very dismissive toward both Danes and the Greenlanders. And you should not forget, because we are Scandinavian people, we are normally very reserved people, but you can say that the words about Greenland and Denmark, Greenland as a piece of ice, and Danes, as something he really did not expect at all, hurt many Danes, of course, and with not and the mood toward USA definitely did not approve at this time. So the ultimate consequences of all this development remain, of course, uncertain. Where are we going? Well, however, but in Denmark and Europe, the broad debate about international order has now been opened in earnest, I would say. Other NATO member states have also drawn their conclusions. Confidence in mutual respect across the Atlantic has been strained, to put it diplomatically, and it raises important questions about future policy. Where are we going? Because many people have been unable, many Danes have been unable to think about a future, to imagine a future without NATO, without United States of America, the protection of the United States of America. Now, some European leaders, Merz, Macron, Meloni from Italy, have, hinted that maybe we should talk with Russia. Maybe the time has come to talk with Russia in this situation. And when I heard this, I said, yes, of course. I just know, because indeed, Europeans and Danes in particular, they may have benefited from early efforts to reduce long-standing dependence on American leadership. Because this American leadership has shaped European policy, Danish policy choices for decades. Remember, Denmark has supported and contributed to troops to numerous United States-led military engagement, and Danish soldiers have lost their lives in conflicts whose purpose now are subject to renewed scrutiny. I have many friends in the Danish army who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they sometimes ask me and ask themselves, actually, what did we fight for? What did our comrades die for? So we don't, this is the sentiment very broad in Denmark right now. And I think that this episode image encouraged from the Danish side of view, I hope so at least, a more pragmatic approach and potentially a more normalized relationship with Russia and of course also China. It's reasonable to ask why an uncompromising stance toward Russia should be maintained when even United States have moved away from the position it previously urged European allies to accept. The same pertains to China. Of course, we should talk to them. So what can we do now? Well, probably you all know, a few weeks ago, we sent symbolic contingents of troops that were German, that were French troops with the berets, and similarly, Kangerlussuaq. It's a fly station in Greenland. So, but I think the time has come, and it's what I have been working for many years, actually, to seek a new way to real rule-based order. And the rule-based order I'm talking about here, it could not be anything but a multipolar world. What should it be? Otherwise, it couldn't be anything. With these words, I will finish, because I think this is so important, and I hope and I think there are openings now, because until now Denmark has been a very, very strong supporter of United States until now, and I have seen it historically, because it's one of the biggest basic changes in the history of Denmark since the Second World War, that we are now doubting about the will and the intents of United States. And so we should, I think we should continue to seek ways. It will be difficult, because we are used to think, most people in Denmark are used to think in another way. They're used to think about United States as our father, I would say, our parents, which will always be there, will be supportive of us. Now we are not quite sure if they defend us, and now we have to think a new security architecture in Europe. And I hope Denmark, with its tradition and our friends in Norway and Sweden and Finland, that we will contribute to a new, a more rule-based order, a peaceful order in Europe. Would it happen? I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nielsen. This was very useful for the discussion. And like yourself, I find this very ironic that they're now turning to Russia after all of this hullabaloo for so many years. And now they're saying, oh, maybe we should be talking with the Russians.
Yeah, maybe.
So anyway, it's very appreciative of what you had to say. We will come back for Q&A, so please stay on the line. We just have a couple more things to go through on the agenda. So next, I'd like to go to, there's a video that was submitted in from an interview of Alberto Vizcarra from Mexico. He's the advisor of the National Front for Saving Mexican Agriculture, and we did have him on a few weeks ago as well live. But if we can pull that video up, please.
Let me just say one thing before we...
Oh, pause for a second, Dave.
Well, yeah, just one thing I wanted to say on that. You'll see the subtitles. It's in Spanish. The subtitles are in English. There are two mistakes which are glaring in the subtitles, which you'll see. The machine translation does not capture the name LaRouche and puts Roche or Lar or something like that. It's LaRouche. And another part where it does not capture the word NAWAPA, the North American Water and Power Alliance, and instead puts La Guapa, when that's a whole other joke. But so go ahead, just so people are aware of it.
Todos estos instrumentos y más fueron desmontados y se instaló desde la firma del Telecán a mediados de los 90 el axioma pernicioso de que resultaba bajo la lógica monetarista la idea de que es más barato importar la comida que producirla nacionalmente. Esto efectivamente que ha llevado a un proceso acumulado de descapitalización. Se estima que de 1994 a la fecha han salido del cuadro de la actividad agrícola en México cerca de 4 millones de productores. Ha habido un desplazamiento físico de los productores. Muchos de ellos han emigrado a los Estados Unidos precisamente en calidad de refugiados económicos, porque no ha habido una política que continúe fortaleciendo el campo mexicano como la hubo hasta 1982. Hoy estamos en una fase extremadamente crítica. No hay mercado para cerca de casi 4 millones de toneladas de maíz, no hay mercado para 500,000 toneladas de frijol, no hay mercado para miles de toneladas de sorgo, no hay mercado para el ciclo que está por salir de otoño-invierno de trigo. Siempre nuestro amigo, el economista Lyndon LaRouche, siempre lo estimó como uno de los proyectos que podía, en el caso del Plino, ser interconectado con el proyecto del Nahuapa para asegurar esta interconexión por la zona fronteriza central, concretamente el río Agua Prieta, que entraría por la parte norte de Sonora para contribuir a esta ampliación de la frontera agrícola. Y LaRouche, recuerdo que siempre lo dijo, para hacer de la relación México y Estados Unidos un ejemplo de la relación norte-sur, en donde las economías se miran en términos del beneficio mutuo y no de que alguien tiene que perder para que otro gane. Creo que estamos en un momento de que estas ideas, de que estos planteamientos se puedan realizar, y creo que acompañados de una consistente movilización social, de resistencia organizada de la población y de los productores, vamos a hacer posible el México y el Estados Unidos que hemos soñado juntos.
Great. Thank you very much for submitting that. And I'll post the link to the full interview in the chat momentarily. So keep a lookout for that. But thank you very much, Alberto, for this contribution today. So we're going to make a slight adjustment to the agenda just because Daniel Burke got tied up with one other thing at the moment, but he'll jump on during the discussion period to give his report. So what we're going to do is we will make the transition to the discussion period right now, and we'll start taking questions from the audience. Oh, excuse me, I'm being corrected by Dennis Small. The full interview with Vizcarra is not available yet, but it will be. It will be soon.
Soon.
Okay. Yes. All right. Oh, wait, I see Daniel Burke just joining us right now. All right, right by the seat of our pants here. All right, why don't we go over to Daniel Burke. He's with the Schiller Institute and a leader of the International Youth Movement. Are you there, Daniel?
I am. Thank you very much.
Great.
I'm just grabbing a crucial URL to share with the group. If I put it in the chat, will everyone see that? Let's see if I change it to everyone. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and include that. Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Burke with the Schiller Institute, and I have been very fortunate to be able to play something of a coordinator role with some of our international youth movement, along with many of my colleagues. And what we have done over the past year, I think, is remarkable. We've gone from a major conference in Newark to a conference in Berlin, then in Paris, with really the tremendous flowering of a new kind of identity among young people from countries across the world, which we saw then in an online conference that followed the Paris conference. This was December 14 of last year. We had 37 countries represented, young people from 37 countries who got together to hear keynote remarks from Helga Zepp-LaRouche, from Dr. Naledi Pandor of South Africa, and from others, including Ambassador Beryl Sisulu, Ambassador of South Africa, to Mexico. And they heard from them and then discussed with presentations from many, many, many different regions. We had people on from all 5 continents. We also had Purnima Anand, who has regularly appeared on the IPC, participate in that event. But the youth were the feature. We have a movement of young people now who are actively trying to figure out how do we bring about the new paradigm. And it's our purpose to accelerate that and to bring it to a more developed, more mature situation through a series of classes, which I want to ask you to recruit young people to, especially as I know many people here are on from South America, from Ibero-America, from North America, from Europe. I want to ask all of you, really get people on from your regions to this class. We'll be doing this monthly. It'll be on Saturdays at 11 a.m. U.S. Eastern. The first one is tomorrow. It is a class given by Helga Zepp-LaRouche. It will be interpreted into French and Spanish. Pardon me if I'm speaking too quickly. No, I'm thinking of the interpreters. But it will be interpreted, and we already have many registrations from all over the world, despite us pulling this together rather quickly. But the purpose of this is, I think, defined by the title that Helga gave to her class, which is No to a Descent into Barbarism, the Statecraft of a New Economic Order. And so this is going to be an opportunity for us to discuss the principles of that kind of statecraft. It will also be a chance to actually discuss our joint initiatives and to follow through on some of the things that we discussed at our December 14th conference that represent spreading the Schiller Institute's mission all over the globe and getting people active across the world. So I ask you to please help us by getting young people to get a picture of this. If you go to the registration link, you will find a 7-minute highlight video from the December 14th conference, and I'm confident that if you show that to any young person from all over the world, you will get a response. They will see what could be if young people from all over work together for a new international security and development architecture. So that's what I have to share. I'll follow up with one minor point, which is that in between the monthly classes, we will have study sessions, perhaps one, perhaps more, but certainly one in each of the different major languages that are involved in this. That is to say, in English, in French, in Spanish, in German. And so there will be an opportunity for people to read Lyndon LaRouche's work, to read other crucial materials, and to discuss the very challenging concepts that we'll be discussing, to discuss them in the language that they speak. So please do help us to organize this class series. We want it to grow. We want more countries every single time. We want more participants. But the main thing is we want this youth movement a crucial strategic flank. Imagine if you have passionate, educated, unified young people who are able to go to their governments and their institutions and introduce the ideas that we're discussing as on the IPC today. That is the thing that I think is perhaps most powerful in changing this dynamic. So please work with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I'm glad we were able to grab you and put you in right at the last moment there, because this is definitely important for people to get involved in. If you are watching over the live broadcast, please contact the Schiller Institute if you are interested in joining the class series. Otherwise, you can select the link in the Zoom chat below. And I'll make the general announcement to people so we can transfer over to the discussion period. If you are watching over YouTube, Rumble, Twitter X, or whatever platform this is being broadcast to, and you'd like to participate in the discussion period, you must be registered. You can do that by going to the YouTube description and select the RSVP page for the International Peace Coalition. Just sign up and you will receive the Zoom link to join the meeting. If you do not see the link there in the YouTube description, or you're on some other thing, go to schillerinstitute.com and you will find the registration page right on the top of the website. So, and with that, Dave, just let me know when we've made the transition.